Hi, this is Perry Marshall. I had a call with Rick Lugash, who came to one of my private events in Los Angeles, and we talked on the phone a couple weeks later, and he had some really interesting things to say about how he was able to get the most possible value from his investment.
I'll tell you where the real value is, and I think people really miss this opportunity. The value is in the recordings. Because, you hear it once and you write it down, but even if you go back and read the notes, they never really, capture it all.
Yeah.
But if when you hear something the second time, your absorption rate goes up exponentially.
That's true.
And so, for me, the value was going back and listening to the day again. Just dramatically so.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, I always record stuff and I try to give it back to people, but it's I just feel it's necessary, but for me it's an afterthought. But you're right. There is so much that goes on in a meeting like that. You'd have to listen to about 3 times to be sure that you got most of what you should get. Right.
And you miss most of it. In fact, I would venture to say that most folks who walked away from that day and didn't listen to it have, really missed a huge opportunity. I'll tell you that I'm an avid pilot. I fly airplanes, and I tell you, my rate, the cockpit is not a very good classroom. You have so much going on. You have so much going on that you really can't absorb anything. And so when I started recording my trainings and then going back and listening to them over and over again, that's when the real learning happened. And so I started doing that for everything because to be present and to really, really be present, you actually can't be taking notes at the same time.
Yeah.
So, presence is a really, very powerful but underrated way of being. And I think you miss that opportunity when you're busy taking notes. So I learned the value of listening to those recordings sometimes over and over and over again for that reason.
Well, I'm taping this now because I tape stuff I'll send you a copy, but I'm going to use that. I think you're really onto something. And, Dan Kennedy's talked about how 20, 30 years ago, Brian Tracy would sell tapes, and he'd say, you need to listen to these 21 times, and people would actually do it.
Yeah.
And now, there's so much social media and all this stuff that nobody, if you said, listen to this 21 times, most people would look at you like you're from Jupiter. But it's true, human beings haven't changed. It takes time to absorb stuff. Hearing a million things one time doesn't really help you very much.
Right, exactly. Well, and actually, I think that's the only way that you become unconsciously competent at something, is to listen to it over and over and over again. I have a good friend, I don't know, you may know his name, Jim Quick. Jim is one of the world-renowned guys on learning, memory, speed reading.
I know the name.
Yeah, he's a real big internet marketing guy, a very close friend of mine. He actually lives here in L.A. Near me, and so I went through his speed reading class several years ago and reading comprehension because we learn to read when we're 9 and 10 or 5, those years, the early years. But we actually never learn how to read again, ever. And so our skills I found my reading skills were really, really poor, and I love to read. And so, he takes you back to the fundamentals, which, everything is fundamentals, right? So he takes you back to, how to learn to read again. And then I went through a speed reading class, but I did it over and over and over again. And I read 3 or 4 books a month now, and because you become unconsciously competent at something versus just that's nice to know, and then kind of move over it. So you replace volume, you go deeper rather than wider, I guess is the distinction.